Breath of the Wild is fantastic. It is so good. It is one of the best games I've played in a long time. Maybe one of the best games ever, I would even say.
Kyle, you gave this game a 10 out of 10.
That's right.
Give me the evolution of that. When did you think in your mind, this might be a 10er?
When I started, I started very strong. I was very excited about it. I was enjoying it a lot. And then I was kind of wavering around that 9.75 area. And then I finished it. And I feel like the culmination of that game kind of really put me over the edge into 10, because that whole game is a build up to that final confrontation. Like, you see Ganon in the distance from the moment you start, and you can see him from almost every vantage point in Hyrule.
He's just waving on top of the castle?
Yeah, but like in a mean way, like a really dismissive way. And it's just because you see him from everywhere, and every person you talk to is kind of affected by him. Like, it just really feels like this huge build up. And that kind of put me over the edge to 10. But then even after that, I have probably put another like 20, 25 hours into the game.
Wow.
And I am still finding stuff that kind of blows me away and surprises me in big ways.
So it's like an 11 now.
Yes, that's correct.
Gosh. Are you the kind of guy that likes to play games after you beat them?
It depends on the game.
Yeah.
Like,
because I like to think that I'm going to go back and do all this stuff after I beat the game, but something about when I see credits, I'm like, all right, I'm checking out, like I'm done. So I always have to like do all the stuff I want to do before the credits.
Yeah.
There's a really good sense of finality to like seeing the credits in the game, but there is just Hyrule is so huge, and not just huge in size, like there is so much interesting stuff in there. Like, I was finding entire towns that I would not have found off the main sort of story after I finished the game. And even last night, like, I don't want to go into detail because it's spoilery, but like, I found something on top of a mountain that I just was totally unexpected.
Snow?
And now that's right. And now I'm like focused on trying to find it again. It really surprised me. And it continued, like, even I'll go back to the area where you start, like the Great Plateau. Like, we were recording a video that will be online at this point, some tips and stuff like that. And I was finding new areas in the Great Plateau that I had never seen that were interesting and worth exploring.
Why interesting?
Well, the sort of design of Hyrule is really fascinating. It's really memorable. Like, I am almost at a point now where you can show me a screenshot and I can kind of tell you about where you are on the map, because everything feels distinct and interesting. And there is, even if there's not, like, the way the weapon system works, you're constantly switching out weapons. And what that means is that everywhere you go, there's an opportunity to find new things, new weapons, new bows and arrows. There's tons of them. Like, I definitely have not seen all the weapons. And then even beyond that, like, even if you climb to the top of a mountain and there's not like a weapon or something up there, like maybe you find a specific type of currency that's difficult to find, just having a new perspective on Hyrule gives you opportunity to find new things and mark things on your map. So even that is rewarding. So even if you climb up to the top of a mountain and don't get anything physical, you're going to be able to look out in the world and see things that you want to go explore.
Okay, so you knew a lot about this game going into it.
Yeah.
What surprised you that is spoiler free?
Oh, that's tough.
What's it better at than people will expect?
These are like tough questions to answer. What is it
Well,
better
after
at than
60
people expect?
hours, I'd imagine.
I think one thing we were uncertain about was we made like, I think someone wrote in and asked us if we thought it would be like technically up to snuff, because
sure.
it's like a new open world, and open worlds are just historically tough. Like, they are glitchy, and I really did not encounter anything as far as that felt off, or like the physics didn't do what I expected them to do. The only sort of technical hiccup I found was maybe there were one or two really densely forested areas where the frame rate dropped a little bit. But otherwise,
and you were playing on Switch.
I was playing on Switch.
Have you tried out the Wii U version?
No, we do not have the Wii U version.
Okay.
So even the review, which I think we have a disclaimer on the review, pertains specifically to the Switch version.
Got it.
Yeah.
Which Nintendo says is very similar.
Yeah.
Which we did play Wii U versions like early on, like last year at
E3.
E3, and it looked good. Technically, it looked really good. So I imagine it's going to be close.
Yeah, I feel like I don't have a sense yet, Kyle, of why this is the 10 out of 10. I mean, technically, it was up to snuff.
Yeah.
It's impressive world. But
Well,
I feel like there's 1,000 areas that we haven't.
The big
dove
thing
into yet.
is, I don't know the last time that I've been so interested in exploring a world on my own. Like, everything you find in that game is your discovery, because the map does not fill. Like, a couple things will appear on your map for you. Like, when you find a shrine, those become fast travel points and they will appear on your map. When you find a place where they give you horses. What the hell are those
A
places
stable?
called? A stable. When you find a stable, those appear on your map. But everything else that you find is your discovery. And because of that, the world is so engaging and so interesting and so fascinating. And because nothing feels like copy pasted assets, like every avenue I took was surprising and interesting, and like even to like a certain degree, like magical. Like that world is just fascinating and interesting to explore.
Now, to draw the comparison, which we said we were going to draw, and Dantek vomited in his mouth, Jeffem just reviewed Horizon. I think a lot of people are playing Horizon now, and they say that world is one of the most gorgeous game worlds I've ever seen in my life. I think there's plenty to explore, plenty to find. What's the difference? Does this just have...
It's not similar at all.
Is this just more of an artistic angle, or what makes this world more magical? Have you played Horizon?
I played it like 4 or 5 hours.
Okay, let's make that comparison.
Okay.
What stands out about this world compared to Horizon's world?
Horizon is more photorealistic, but I think
There we
Zelda
go.
definitely has the edge on art direction in
Sure.
terms of just like beautiful art.
Mhm.
And they absolutely are comparable. I mean, you are like out in the world, like fighting animals sometimes with bow and arrows.
And I'm not saying those games are identical, but just in terms
Absolutely
of
not,
exploring
no.
an open world, what makes this one pop compared to other open worlds?
So I went back to Horizon after finishing after beating Zelda, and I really don't want to diminish Horizon because I haven't played it a ton, and everyone in the office really loves that game, and I want to play more of it. But I will say that I immediately felt like I wasn't able to explore as much as I could in Breath of the Wild, because the two big things that Breath of the Wild does really well is being able to use your paraglider to get around and being able to climb literally any surface. Like that, climbing is a big deal. Like being able to climb anything really opens up the exploration in a profound way.
Everything.
Pretty much, like inside the dungeons, you
Yeah.
can't climb because
Right.
it would kind of break the puzzle design. But outside of dungeons and shrines, which kind of fall under the same umbrella as dungeons, every surface in that game can be climbed.
Beetle?
The person?
Yeah.
I haven't tried, but if I could climb on his back, it wouldn't surprise me because everything is like that sticky, like that you can get on top of it and climb every mountain, climb
You're
every
basically
pillar.
Spider-Man.
To a certain degree, yeah. Like I did, like a simple thing was like I found these huge statues, and normally, like in like another open world game, there would be it would be this kind of cool area that you could discover, and it would be this really nice set dressing of like, look at these amazing statues. But they become like these new avenues for exploration because you can climb on them, you can use them to kick off paragliding, and you can get a new view on Hyrule and stuff like that. And I mean, it just makes every inch of that game feel like a place where you can go and check it out.
Okay, let's go down tool set. Let's go down physics. Which do you want
Physics.
to talk about?
Tool set. What do you mean, like weapons and
Your
stuff?
tools,
Yeah, the items in
The
your Zelda game.
boomerangs.
And combined with
You
like
got
the
bow.
physics of the world, the
Yeah.
physics of the new engine, all that stuff. Does it interact? Are you having crazy experiences with different abilities?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the big things are paragliding and climbing. Like those are going to
Okay.
be what you do the most of. You do have, I mean, we haven't even talked about like puzzle design yet of the
Yeah.
shrines and the dungeons, but you have that magnet item and you have that time stop item. The time stop stuff like is mostly something that you're going to use more in combat. To like you can after a certain point you are able to freeze enemies temporarily, which is really helpful.
It's cool.
And then the magnet tool out in the wild, you can lift up certain objects and move them around. And even like I created like a seesaw actually once that like launched me up in the air just using the physics and a rock that I could pick up.
Awesome.
So one thing I like about the Zelda franchise is that sense of progression you get as you slowly you go to a new dungeon, get a new item, and then that like unlocks all these things. You can like suddenly get to certain chests and whatnot.
Mhm.
And I like that sort of leveling up aspect, quote unquote. But in this game, it seems like you get almost all of your items like super early in the game. So do you feel like you still have that sense of progression, or is
Yeah,
that lost a little bit?
no, I think it. I'm with you. Like in Zelda, there's a certain value, and even like something like Metroid, of seeing something being like, I don't think I can interact with that. I wonder what I can use to, to solve that puzzle and then come back to it later. And that aspect of the game is totally gone. But I don't miss it. Like being able to go anywhere and be able to interact, like being able to go to any shrine and instantly know, like, I have what I need to solve this. I just have to figure it out.
Mhm.
That leads to some really fascinating puzzle design. And I was even finding new ways to solve puzzles. Like I think I've found there's supposed to be like 100 shrines in the game. I think I've found 60 of them at this point. And even like the last 2 or 3 shrines I did still felt like I was finding new ways to use the items.
Is this game everything you wanted from a Zelda game? Does it just nail every aspect?
It really feels. It feels like this is. So I really love Ocarina of Time. Like when I played that game when I was younger, there was like a moment where you go forward in time and you learn about, everything that's happened and you're in the Temple of Time. And I remember playing that sequence and being really, like, literally emotionally moved by that moment. And you're giving me the smirk, like, oh, we're gonna get
No smirks here.
a
No
sympathetic
smirks
smirk.
here.
But like normally in that world, you roll around, you hit stuff, you kind of fool around. But I remember after that moment,
around.
yeah, like
Mario.
throw bombs at everything and you mess around with the world. But I remember
He is
after
a
that
teenager.
moment, being in the Temple of Time, feeling like literally feeling like I was in a holy place. Like I shouldn't be throwing bombs at the wall in here. I shouldn't be hitting my sword.
The music certainly helps in the Temple of Time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like in a lot of ways, like as I play games, I'm kind of chasing that feeling again. Like I'm looking for like a game that affects me that much. And there are moments in Breath of the Wild where I felt like when I found something really spectacular and I really, because of the way the map fills out, like you fill out the map, it's not like, hey, we're going to put a checkpoint here. You go find that.
Mhm.
Since you find stuff on your own, you really have a sense of ownership over these like discoveries in the world. And I got that sense again where I was like, I'm in a really special place here. I shouldn't be messing around.
That's so weird. I mean, you think of Temple of Time, small space, confined, music adds a ton to that
Yeah.
holy atmosphere. I cannot logically connect that to what it's like to find an object, a creature, something in the world and think this is a holy thing.
Yeah, it's
Zelda holy. Which
it's
is
hard
a
to
certain
explain.
type of
It's just
thing.
this like weird. I think the main thing about it is just the fact like that since you're given a few checkpoints for like dungeons and story specific things, but for the most part, every discovery you find in that game is yours and yours to take ownership over, and it really just makes the world feel magical and interesting.
Any downside to this game? By the way, I'm not trying to sound negative. I know I'm coming in playing devil's advocate.
No, that's
but
great.
I'm trying to understand what this game is.
I mean, it really. I am curious to see what other people take away from it because this is obviously my own personal experience. Like, I wonder if other people will dislike how open it truly is because you can go in any direction. You don't even have to do dungeons as you make your way to Ganon. You don't have to do shrines. You can just explore.
Real quick, what's the point of doing a dungeon then?
Well, I mean, that's a little bit of a spoiler. There are rewards for doing the dungeons.
It's worth
absolutely.
it.
And there is story stuff connected to it that you'll want to get.
Always
So
worth it, though.
It's worth
Yeah,
it. you would
absolutely.
say.
You should
Okay.
do the dungeons for
Okay.
sure.
Anyways, too open. Maybe.
Yeah, I wonder if some people might find it too open. The weapon degradation system, which is something that we were unsure about.
Yeah.
Early on in that game, I continued to be unsure about it. But you do hit a point where you stop being precious about your items and you start to really enjoy using those items to the point of breaking and like throwing them in the face of an enemy so hard that they shatter and do extra damage. And like the thing I kind of had to get over like trying to find items and be like, oh, I gotta save this one for later because I like this one. What you end up doing is like there's like a sword type, there's a staff type, and then there's like a big heavy weapon type. If you like one of those three, you kind of learn to sort of look for that type of weapon.
Okay.
Like you don't necessarily find like, oh, I found this royal sword that I really love. I'm gonna go find a bunch of these. Like you kind of have to get over that. And after a certain point, I really started to appreciate and even enjoy like the weapon system because what it does is it makes exploration more fun because there's more stuff to find everywhere.
Yeah. I heard you I just heard you talking to someone else in the office, or maybe it was me. I forget. I was pretty zoned out. And you said this game makes every other Zelda game look juvenile.
Yeah, I
What does
didn't
that
say
mean?
juvenile. I said shallow.
Okay.
Which is absolutely true because of how
You called them
open
baby games.
every other
Games
Zelda
for
game.
baby said they were toddler games.
After you play
like,
Breath of the Wild, every Zelda game now feels like a baby game. I mean, especially if you because I played Skyward Sword a bit before jumping back into this, and I played through Twilight Princess before starting Breath of the Wild. And because of how linear those games are, I mean, they're not very linear actually when you look at maybe compared to other types of games. But after playing Breath of the Wild, to look back at those games, it really feels like you're being pulled along on a string through like a series of engaging combat and puzzle scenarios. But because of how open this is, like it really makes looking back on those games like feel like they're really constrained and shallow.
Jesus. Reeves, are you enjoying the game as much as Kyle did?
Yeah, I don't know if I can say that because I'm not nearly as far in. Like I haven't even done a single dungeon yet. So I don't know if I'm like ready to score it, if I would score it, which I don't
Sure.
have to. But I am saying like I'm liking it a lot. I do like the sense of freedom I get. I'm still in that unsure stage of the weapon degradation thing.
Okay.
I don't feel like it's necessary. I think you could have gotten the same sense of like oh, I'm constantly getting new items like you do in Diablo if they'd gone that route instead, and then you don't have to worry about your weapons breaking. But I will say at the same time, I've never been stuck without a weapon.
Yeah.
So there's that. I really like finding shrines. I've been kind of trolling around the area just looking for new shrines and like doing those puzzles because they're rewarding. They're rewarding in an accomplishment sense, but then you're also like there's reasons to do them as well.
Okay.
Because
reasons.
they become fast travel points, which is hugely
Right.
important, and then there also are physical rewards in each of them. So
I think last time we talked about the game on the podcast too, we were all noting how difficult it was based on our play session. Was it just that Nintendo for that demo placed us in a tricky area, or is the game as hard as we thought?
the game is tough.
Okay.
I died a lot, especially early on because you only have a couple hearts. But the checkpoints are done well. Like it's not like Dark Souls difficult. You will run into enemies that are going to be difficult to fight, but it's friendly with its checkpoints. And then the other big thing is, regardless, you can be like literally drowning or in the middle of a fight and you can teleport away. Like you can always leave a place of danger if you're in trouble, which helps the difficulty. Because like if you end up in there were a couple times when I ended up in a place I didn't expect to be, and things got really heated, and it was just simple as like looking at the map and transporting away to a shrine that I had recently discovered or something like that.
Okay.
So that good checkpoints and the being able to teleport anytime, that helps the difficulty a lot. But this is probably I guess if you think back to maybe like some of the 2D ones, like this is definitely the most challenging 3D Zelda, I think.
Okay.
But it is also really rewarding because you get an opportunity to prepare for everything. So like you might be like, all right, I went up there, I was freezing, there were tough enemies. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make some, hot pepper dishes so I can have so I can be warm up here, and then I'm going to maybe get another potion that'll like up my strength a little bit. And then when you prepare and then make your way through that area, it's really rewarding for sure.
I think one of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, but like that world is really fun to explore. And when I heard about it early on, I kind of thought Skyrim is obviously an easy comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And Skyrim world is fun to explore, but like really what I want to do in Skyrim is engage with the quests, because that's the stuff that like stuff happens in the world. And instead with Zelda, like the stuff happening in the world is just sort of happening there. I'm really sensitive to spoilers, so I feel like I'm talking vaguely.
Yeah.
But like the stuff that you would normally find in a quest is just sort of happening in the world, and then you wander into it and engage in that stuff. Like I wandered up this like mountain and I saw this creature thing that I was engaged with, and I'm like, this thing is amazing, and like it's weird that there's not like a special quest associated with this.
It's all just
sort of like
natural
fighting it, and it's fun and like crazy cool looking.
You might find someone later who like wants a picture of that thing, or wants a piece. Like enemies drop items,
Wants
so
a
like
piece of
maybe
it?
he wants that. Yeah, maybe he wants a piece of that. So you will find those. They do exist. There are
Gotta
missions
get
in
me a
that way.
piece of that.
Jeff, I'm curious your perspective on this thing, because if I'm not mistaken, your favorite game of all time is Link to the Past.
Yeah.
And then you just soured and hardened over the years.
Yeah. I mean, I played Ocarina
Related
of
to
Time
birds?
and Majora's Mask and stuff, but at a certain point, I was like, these games aren't doing anything that, I don't feel I've already gotten from this series, and so I lost interest in that
They're
sense.
baby games.
They are shallow games for babies.
Oh, Jesus Christ, what are you guys doing?
But no.
Getting good comments.
Don't
Good
do that.
comments.
And it's been interesting listening to everything that Kyle has said and reading his review. I have wondered and actually asked him before.
You had a really good question for me earlier today.
Reenact it. Let's go.
What was my question?
It was about Link's clothing.
Oh yeah, does Link have nipples? Which we found out he doesn't.
He does not.
He does not
Oh,
have
no.
nipples.
No elves have nipples.
That's right.
They're not mammals.
No, but
Kind of like Raiden and his body parts.
the thing I've been wondering, we'll just move past it. We can move past that. The thing I was wondering, and that I asked him about before, is how much is his love of Zelda kind of influencing, the grandness of this adventure? And I still can't really tell, but a lot of what he has been talking about has made me intrigued enough that I want to actually play this month.
Like, for example, for the sake of argument, and again, drawing Horizon, not saying they're the same game, but if Kyle was playing Horizon and dressed Aloy up in a cute little green hat and then played the Zelda theme as he's running through the woods, would he then automatically fall in love?
Yeah.
well, you can't do those, and you can't do that in Breath of the Wild. So.
Uh-huh.
I mean, one of the things that's really additionally nice about Breath of the Wild for fans of Zelda, maybe not, is that it really dismisses a lot of the tropes of Zelda. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you would have expected to be in this game that's not. Like, early on, I think I even posted in our Slack group, I had pretty much all the items and was well into the game before I ever saw a rupee, which is bizarre.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, and so even, I mean, I don't think being a Zelda fan, I guess I'm trying to think of a good way to say this. Like, even if you're not a Zelda fan, there's still a lot here to love, because there are certainly Zelda things in it throughout. I mean,
Thank
it's
God.
a Zelda game, but it definitely looks at it. They definitely. I mean, there's a reason he wears a blue shirt mostly. Is I think they really wanted to get away from, like, look, this is something new for Zelda. This feels a lot different than past Zeldas, and I think it does.
Remember
Breath
when
of
they
Fresh Air.
first debuted this game and they were talking about, like, oh, Link's a girl, or that joke was running around?
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
Like, how weird was that?
He was kind of cagey in like interviews about it.
It's like it could be a
oh, maybe
girl.
we're trying to hint towards that, or maybe it could be, or some. It was,
but then they kind of turn
nonsense.
around on it. They're like, oh no, Link's a man.
He's still a guy.
Yeah, but
all the
Jeff,
women in Hyrule are actually very attracted to you. It's weird.
really?
Yeah, like, you can go read people's diaries and
To
they talk
me
about.
personally,
Yeah, to Ben Reeves, the
You've
sexual
been
icon of
asleep
Game
for
Informer
so
magazine.
long, Reeves.
Sleeping Beauty is what they call me.
The takeaway I was trying to get from you, Jeff, that you never hinted at. Are you going to play this game? Are you excited for this
Yeah,
game? Now
I think I'm gonna play. I have not, I'm not on the Switch bandwagon yet. I haven't pre-ordered one or anything.
Okay.
But it's in the office, and I'm, like I said, I am very intrigued by the things that it's doing differently. So
okay.
I'm excited for fans like Jeffem and like Matt Burtz especially to like play this game, or even Dan Tack, who I think is
Right.
also kind of on the same boat. Like,
Yeah.
I think they will really like this game.
The old school Zelda fans who are sick of having their hands held.
Yeah, I mean, this game doesn't hold your hand at all. Like, you are I think I'm trying to think if there's really not even a lot of tutorial in that first hour. It just kind of lets you go.
What about, spoiler free, what
Okay.
was your perception of the entire story?
I like the story.
Okay, and how did the story go?
There's a bad guy.
Uh-huh.
I will say this of the story, which I believe is spoiler free, is that it acknowledges the sort of history of Zelda in the sense that, like, this is a thing that keeps happening, is that Link and Zelda have to fight Ganon,
Mhm.
and it takes that into effect in the story, or it takes that into account for the story, and acknowledges that that's actually really hard, and it's a difficult thing for them to do, and it is much harder.
That their souls have to constantly be reincarnated.
That's right, and it's a much like, even though the mission isn't dramatically different, it's much harder than it's ever been for them in Breath of the Wild, and the story sort of acknowledges that.
Because all the other ladies are hitting on Link.
Yeah, and Zelda gets super jealous.
A lot of
Okay.
romantic tension there.
You, and again, no spoilers. You hinted in the office that, like, I am so glad that Nintendo is so tight-lipped about this game, because there are a ton of surprises that I had no idea
Mhm.
were in this game. To what extent?
Would you
Are
like me to
these-
list them?
Are these 10 out of 10 surprises? Or just like little things like, oh, I didn't know this type of creature was in the game? Or is it like Metal Gear Solid 2 style surprise? I'm trying to figure out where on the spectrum of surprises.
I think somewhere in the middle. There's a couple
Wow.
of big, like, in the story, there's a couple of very big surprises that I did not expect. Like, some things that you and I discussed and maybe even, like, guessed at, and, like, but, without
Like the
spoilers.
fact that Big Boss is in it, it's a big deal.
That's a weird thing.
Venom
yeah.
Snake.
But then there are also surprises of, like, oh, I didn't expect for this thing to be in the game, like, in the same sense of, like, looking at the legacy of previous Zelda games, and also
Yeah.
just brand new surprises that I didn't expect to be happening.
Okay.
Where does it rank in your Zelda pantheon? Are you
Hanson
ready
asked
to
me
put
this
that in there?
right after I beat it. It's definitely high. Like, I think Ocarina is still my favorite, mostly because that was my first Zelda game,
Okay.
and I still have a lot of nostalgia for that game. Like, I really feel like I would have never pursued a career in writing about video games if I hadn't played Ocarina of
Let
Time.
alone it founded that religion based on the Temple of Time.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
That's a weird thing that I kind of had to let go when I got the job
Yeah.
at Game Informer. So,
Yeah.
but
Even.
so Ocarina is probably still number one, and Majora's Mask has jumped up recently after replaying it on 3DS. I
Okay.
really love that game a lot, but it's up there in like the top three, like maybe number
Wow.
two. It's really good.
Here, just to break it down a little bit, Game Informer has a long history of giving 10 out of 10s to the Zelda series, Kyle. So this is
Yeah.
from your perspective. Is Breath of the Wild a better game from your vantage point than Wind Waker?
Yes.
Twilight Princess,
Yes.
Skyward Sword,
Oh yeah.
Link Between Worlds.
Yes, with a pause.
Why a pause?
Because Link Between Worlds sort of set the stage for Breath of the Wild in terms of openness and taking dungeons on in any order, and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
That's high praise, man.
Yeah, I feel like Breath of the Wild in some ways is like maybe the closest analogy is actually Wind Waker if the ocean was not boring.
Did you play the Wii U remake of that one?
Yeah, I played about half of it.
Okay. I reckon anybody who never played Wind Waker or was middling on Wind Waker, I recommend going back to that because I think that remaster is just an amazing way to take
Yeah.
that game and
Yeah.
make it shine even brighter.
So your 10 is better than everyone else's 10. So that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I thought about it a lot. I went on walks around my neighborhood.
We should be really excited about Breath of the Wild, right? If people
Yeah.
haven't picked it up yet.
I am really excited for you guys to play and the wider internet to play because I feel like even after like 60 hours and doing more than half the shrines, I still feel like I have not seen all that game has to offer by any stretch.
There's
of
going to be
the
some
imagination.
fun videos rolling out of this
Oh
thing.
yeah, I can't wait.
Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can click right here if you want to subscribe and listen to the audio version of the full show. Full episodes air every Thursday, and they feature Game Informer editors sitting around talking about the biggest reviews, previews. We talk about exclusive impressions of Game Informer's cover stories. We have long-form developer interviews, everything that's great in gaming. So every Thursday, be sure to check it out.